Welcome to NoFap Nation. Today we're talking about why self-touch doesn't stop after marriage. Getting married won't magically stop self-pleasure. Just because you have a partner now doesn't mean your solo habits disappear overnight. Many people believe that once they get married, all their personal habits, especially those related to self-pleasure, will automatically stop. But the truth is, marriage doesn't press some magical reset button on your brain or your body. If you've been used to releasing stress or emotions through solo pleasure for years, that habit won't simply vanish because you now have a partner. Self-pleasure is often more mental than physical. It becomes a pattern, something people do to cope with boredom, anxiety, or emotional emptiness. So even when you're in a loving relationship, the habit may still remain. This isn't about lacking love or attraction for your spouse. It's about how deeply rooted these behaviors can be in your personal routine. Also, marriage brings its own challenges: stress, responsibilities, time pressure, and sometimes people fall back into old habits as a form of escape. This doesn't mean the relationship is broken. It means the individual needs to be more mindful and intentional about what they're doing and why. Real change comes from awareness and discipline, not from a wedding ring. If you want to shift away from solo pleasure and focus more on shared intimacy, it takes effort, communication, and patience with yourself and your partner. So no, marriage won't fix this for you. Only you can. It's more about the mind than the body. Touching yourself isn't always about desire. It's often about emotions, stress, or mental patterns. Most people think self-pleasure is purely physical, driven by sexual desire, but in reality it's often more about the mind than the body. The action might feel physical, but the trigger behind it is usually emotional or psychological. Many individuals turn to self-touch, not because they're turned on, but because they're feeling lonely, bored, stressed, anxious, or even depressed. It's a quick escape, a temporary way to release tension and distract from uncomfortable emotions. Over time, this behavior forms a mental loop. Feel something negative. Escape through self-pleasure. Repeat. This is why even married people or those in relationships still struggle with it. It's not about their partner not being enough. It's about the habit being deeply rooted in their mind as a coping mechanism. It becomes automatic. The brain associates it with comfort, relief, or even control over something when life feels overwhelming. In many cases, people don't even realize why they're doing it. They might not feel aroused, yet still find themselves going down that road. That's because the body is following what the mind has trained it to do over time. It's less about passion and more about pattern. Understanding this is powerful. It means that breaking free doesn't start with your body. It starts with your mind. You have to identify the triggers, notice the emotions, and build new ways to deal with stress or discomfort. Mindfulness, journaling, therapy, or simply taking a walk when the urge hits. These small steps can slowly rewire the brain. Bottom line, self-control starts with self-awareness, and most of the battle is mental, not physical. Intimacy with your partner is different. Physical connection in marriage is about mutual love, not a replacement for solo acts. A lot of people assume that once they get into a relationship or get married, physical intimacy with their partner will completely replace any need or urge for self-pleasure. But that's not how it actually works. Intimacy with a partner and solo acts come from two very different emotional places. True intimacy in a relationship is built on connection, trust, and love. It's not just about the physical act. It's about being present with your partner, sharing emotions, and building a bond through closeness. It's a two-way street where both people give and receive affection, comfort, and care. On the other hand, solo pleasure is often about self-soothing. It's usually private, driven by personal emotions, stress, or even habit. It doesn't involve communication, understanding, or emotional exchange. So even when someone is in a loving marriage, they might still turn to solo acts because it's familiar, easy, and doesn't require vulnerability or emotional energy. It's important to recognize that one cannot simply replace the other. You might be physically satisfied with your partner, but if you're mentally or emotionally off balance, those old patterns can come back. That's why a healthy relationship doesn't just rely on physical closeness. It involves emotional openness too. If solo habits continue after marriage and start to interfere with intimacy, it's not always about desire. It could be about deeper needs that haven't been addressed. Having honest conversations, understanding each other's needs, and growing together emotionally can help shift the focus back to shared connection. In short, intimacy with your partner is a unique experience, and it's not just a substitute for personal habits. It's something much deeper and far more meaningful. Habit doesn't vanish with a ring. Old routines don't change just because your relationship status changed. Getting married doesn't magically erase habits you've built over years. People often believe that saying "I do" will suddenly make all personal struggles, like self-pleasure or addictive behaviors, disappear. But marriage is a life change, not a mind reset. Habits, especially ones tied to emotion or comfort, are deeply wired into your brain. If you've been turning to solo pleasure to deal with stress, boredom, anxiety, or even just routine, that habit doesn't vanish the moment you become someone's husband or wife. Your relationship status might have changed, but your mental patterns haven't, at least not yet. Think of it like this. If you've been drinking coffee every morning for 10 years, would getting married stop that craving? Probably not. The same logic applies to habits like self-touch. It's not just about desire. It's about repetition, mental triggers, and emotional response. Many people enter marriage expecting everything to fix itself. When that doesn't happen, they feel guilt, confusion, or even shame. But the reality is, change takes intentional effort. You have to unlearn old behaviors and replace them with healthier, relationship-focused habits. This doesn't mean something is wrong with your marriage. It simply means you're human. Breaking old habits, especially ones you've kept private for years, takes awareness, patience, and consistency. So if you're struggling with the same habits even after marriage, don't beat yourself up. A ring on your finger doesn't solve everything overnight. But recognizing the issue is the first step toward real change. Suppressing without understanding leads to guilt. Instead of hiding or feeling ashamed, understand the root and talk about it. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to quit a habit like self-pleasure is to simply suppress it without really understanding why it's there in the first place. They try to force quit without addressing the root cause, and when the urges return, which they often do, they're left feeling frustrated, guilty, and ashamed. But guilt doesn't fix the problem. In fact, it often makes it worse. The more you hide it or feel ashamed of it, the more power it has over you. It becomes this secret cycle: urge, act, guilt, repeat. And over time, that can affect your self-esteem, your mental health, and even your relationships. What actually helps is understanding the why behind the habit. Are you using it to cope with stress, escape boredom, numb emotional pain, feel a sense of control? Once you know what's really driving the behavior, you can start to address it in a healthy way. And don't be afraid to talk about it, whether that's with your partner, a therapist, or a support group. Conversations like these break the shame cycle. You'll realize you're not alone, and more importantly, that you're not broken. You're just human, dealing with something that many others face too. Suppressing emotions without awareness only builds pressure. But understanding, openness, and communication, that's where the real healing starts. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest with yourself and willing to grow. Remember, real strength isn't in hiding your struggles. It's in facing them head on. If this hit home, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to NoFap Nation. Real talk, no filters.